Well, good morning. Welcome to Papa's Workshop. This is for Adam, Brady, Luke, and Brenna. Today we're on sort of a field trip. We're not in the workshop. We got some home improvement projects to be done. And one is to fill this hole in the wall. So if you're roughhousing with your nephews and nieces and somebody kicks a hole in the wall, you'll know how to fix it. This was an old intercom that we don't use anymore, so the hole's already square, but that's the first thing is you need to kind of make the hole square so you can put a piece of drywall in there. And drywall is basically 2 sheets of paper with a layer of gypsum in between. This is 1/2 inch thick. They come in different thicknesses, but usually it's a 1/2 inch thick in the houses. But it's not terribly strong. That's why they have studs. The 2x4 is every 16 inches so that it's a little stronger. And but it's pretty easy to cut. All you have to do is take a knife. Here, let me get my knife. All right, so you just take a knife, and I'm just taking a straight edge on this line, and I'm just going to score it. Usually you do that on a table or something, but I don't have one up here. All right, so all I've done is just score that line. I've just broken that first layer of paper. So now all you have to do is just like that. And then while it's folded, cut the other half of the paper. Well, not cutting yourself. So now, that's all there is to cutting drywall. So why do they call it drywall? Well, before drywall was available, it was plaster and lath. The wall would have been covered with thin strips of wood that was called lath, and then they would plaster over that, so that was a wet wall, and this is a dry wall. So we got this patch here, and it looks like I got to chew out the corners a little bit, but it's just about right. But we don't have anything to support it. If I had that clear, it would just go right through. So we've got to do something to support it. So what we're going to do is take some scrap pieces of board here and stick that up in the hole like this, and put a screw here and a screw there, and do another one over there. Then we'll have something to go up against. So that's what we're going to do, is put those two boards in and get those corners so this piece will just fit right in. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so we got our patch in there. So now I need to put screws in there to hold our piece in place. You don't want to get too close to the edge, and you don't want to sink those screws past the paper. You just want to get it flush. You don't want them to stick out. All right. So now it's important that everything is flush. So we're going to take it. Take sandpaper or something, just kind of get rough. So now we need to fill those cracks. And use different products. I'm going to use just paper. So I'm going to put some drywall compound on there, which is affectionately called mud. So we're going to put the mud in there and then put strips all around, and we want to get it as flat down as we can. There will be a little bit of a hump here. There's just no way around it. Drywall at the edges of it on the long side usually comes in sheets of 4 foot wide by either 8, 10, or 12, or even 16 foot long. Well, that long edge usually has a tapered thickness, so that when you put the two, they usually hung horizontally, and when the two tapers come together, you've got a place to put the tape and then the mud so that it's flat. Well, we don't have that luxury when you're patching a hole, so we'll have to make this slightly, but we'll have to spread this out so that it isn't very noticeable. So that's the next pace, is to put the mud on. So let's do that. All right. It's important to get that tape. I'm using paper drywall tape, but you can get it in a mesh as well that you stick on first and then put over it. But that's a little thicker. The paper you can get really thin. So you put the mud on first, then you put that paper over it, then you have to really press down and make sure you got all the bubbles. You don't want any bubbles behind there. And you want that paper down as flat as possible, and the mud will act as a glue. So now we're going to just try to smooth this out so that we won't have as much sanding to do. It's got two little holes here. We're just going to put the mud. So that'll just have to dry. And then we'll sand it, and then we'll get even a bigger drywall knife and spread that out even farther. So it takes 2, maybe 3 times of getting it smooth. And then it really helps to, on those final coats, to have that raking light come across so you can see where the pitfalls are. So that's all there is to it. It's kind of an easy deal. My assistant is downstairs in the workshop. She thinks we're going to be down there. But if she wanders up here, we'll get her in there. But right now, she's out of action. Our next home improvement project is to put hardwood flooring in on this bedroom. Then the first thing you got to do is get all the furniture out of there. Well, mostly all the furniture out of there. We've got a bed frame that's off screen that is a little awkward to move, and there's no place to put it. It's actually kind of a strange bed frame. I'll have to show that later, why it's strange. But anyway, so after all the furniture's out of there, we got to remove the carpet. And then under the carpet is a pad. And then around the room to hold the carpet in place is a tack strip. So we got to remove all of that. And then all the staples in the floor from the pad. So we got to get a clean floor to start with. So let's get together with, or get started on that. First thing I got to do is find where the door is going to go, or where the door was. I took the door out, but we need to have the new flooring meet up with the carpet in the hallway in the middle of where the door would be, so that when the door is closed, you'll just see carpet from the outside and you'll just see the flooring from there. So I got to make that cut first, and then we'll be able to start rolling this up. What I'm going to do is cut it into 2.5, 3 foot wide strips and roll it up so we can throw it away in the regular trash. It's not really enough to warrant a dumpster, so we'll just do it that way, and in 2 or 3 weeks we'll get rid of it all. So let's get started. Okay, you see we got the carpet and the pad up, but we still got the tack strips, and we got all these staples in here. We've got to pull all of those out. And I got an expert helper doing some of that. And if I fool around long enough with something else, maybe she'll finish it. But I still have to get all the tack strips up. And then we have to check the floor for nails sticking up and flatness before we start doing anything else. All right, so we got all the staples up, so I started to remove the tack strips. And the tack strips, see, they got these nails, big nails, that's how it's nailed to the floor. And then up on top, see, it's got all these spikes in it for the carpet. And they're angled, if you can see that. They're angled towards the wall. So they take the carpet, a tool what they kick with their knee, and push the carpet toward the wall, and then it grabs, these strips grab it, and then they stuff it underneath the trim, which we'll have to take off later. So right now I need to go around the room and remove that tack strip, and the things are awful dangerous because they're pretty sharp. So we have to be careful. I'm wearing gloves. Okay, we got the tack strips pulled out and all the staples out. Next time, we got to remove that trim. The floor is thicker than this. It needs to go under this, or be able to go under this. There's actually going to have to be a 3/4 inch gap all the way around to allow the floor to move. So we're going to take this off, but we're going to reuse it and just move it up a little bit. So we have to be careful taking it off. So first thing is we need to score the top of it with a knife. Oops, that's what you don't want to do. And there's multiple layers of paint and probably caulk on the top of that. So we want it to split right where we want it to split. And the same with this piece over here. And then we have to carefully get behind it. And that is sometimes a problem. There, went right in. All right, so now we need to use a pry bar and gently get that out of there. If we can use a second one. There we go. Just a matter of working your way down the nails. Corner, it's coped, which means that other piece is cut with this profile and this fits behind it. And that's normally the way you do the inside corners. The outside corners, it has to be mitered. But now the next thing is we got to get the nails out of this. So you don't pound the nails out because it's got a plug there and it might tear it up. So what you do is use a nail puller. Use this nail puller and just pull them back right all the way through, so there's no nails in it. So we'll have to clean all these fuzzies off of it, and then we can give them a good coat of paint before we put them back up. So we just have to go around the room and do that, and we got to get the nails out of the wall too that were left in there. So we go around to do that, and then we'll be ready to, we got to do the door jambs next. So there we have it. It's coped. So you got to look at that when you're taking them apart and protect that. And then I've numbered them. That's number 10, so that I know which order they go back in place. So this. All right. The next thing we got to do is here's our flooring that we're going to use. Is a pre-finished 3/4 inch pre-finished hickory. And rather than trying to cut this whole profile on this board, what we do is we cut this off so that this board fits underneath it. You know, it does almost here in the front, so we've got to cut just a little bit off. And the way we do that is with a tool, a new tool. This vibrates at a high adjustable frequency back and forth, and it's got a little saw blade up front. I use this block as my guide, so the block and the saw blade are right at the same height as this board. So we just have to go and undercut that. See, so now it fits under there. I just got to get that little bit at the end of this. And it fits right in. That's just what we want. So we got to do that. There's 2 doors, one to the bathroom, one to the hallway. We got to do that on both sets of jambs, and then we'll be ready to start prepping the floor. Well, here we are the next morning. We're pretty much ready to start, but we've got one more thing that we need to do before we got all the trim up and the rug and the carpet, all that stuff. But we need to get the floor cleared. This plywood's called the subfloor. So it's a 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood that they put over the joists. But not all the nails, or some of the nails have backed up. So we have to pound the nails in. Let me see if I can find one that's sticking up here. I already did this section, but we need to pound the nails in, make sure the nails and that everything's get all this stuff up. There's blotches of stuff like this. Anything that's sticking up, we need to get rid of, and then we need to sweep and vacuum it so there's no debris. We're going to put down a hard floor, so a bump would you'd have trouble getting the board down at one side or the other. So, and we need to make sure it's reasonably flat, that there's no big, I just use a level as a straight edge, and just check it that way to make sure that there's no big bumps. I can sweep that around and see, I catch that edge right there, so I need to work on that a little bit. But, so we need to put the boards in perpendicular to the joists. The joists are what support the subfloor, and generally they go across the short side of the house. In this house, there's a center beam that's in the hallway, basically, and so the joists go from the window to the hall. So we need to run the boards parallel to the hallway. So it's going to go the way that level is. So we need to check things that way. So once I get all the nails flushed and the floor cleaned, then we can start laying out how we're going to do this. Okay. The room's all cleared out. All the nails are down. The first thing I did is to measure the room. And the room is pretty square, so that's good. But we still need to do a chalk line. So I've measured out from the wall for both walls, and we're centered. So we just need to do a chalk line. If I had my chalk. This just has a container of string. and you put the chalk in there. In this case it's red chalk. So I'm going to have my assistant grab one end. My other assistant's in the basement sleeping. So we'll use that to make sure that this first row is going to be straight. So the next thing we need to do before starting that is to put down the vapor barrier. So we're going to use this paper and put down a roll. Try and get it open. Silicone paper. It does two things. It forms a moisture vapor or vapor barrier, but then it also prevents if things loosen up over time, prevents it from the floor from squeaking, because it'll slip on the paper. So we'll just staple this down and we'll be ready. So we got our first row laid out. Okay. You notice that they're skinnier. Well, I'm measuring it. I decided that the thing to do would be cut this first row. I need the threshold to be an inch bigger than the rest of that row. And that makes me, so when I end up at the other end, I won't have to cut, or I'll be cutting like a half a board. I won't have to cut a little thin strip. So we're going to be using a nail gun, a flooring nailer, and what that does is it puts the nail down in at an angle. Let's see if I can do that. It's going to put the nail right here on this edge at an angle on the lip of the board. See, there's a little how it's got a groove down there. So that's where the nail has to go. And in this case, we're going to use these 2-inch staples to go in the gun. But you could use a flooring nail, same thing, 2-inch flooring nail, just has a hook on it. And go down in there too. I kind of like the nails better, but I have a bunch of the staples that I'm going to use up. So, but this first couple rows can't get the gun in there. See, this just fits on the. See how it fits on the board? It's got a little edge on it, and then you hit this end with a hammer, and it's run by compressed air, and that'll knock the staple in. But we can't use it those first couple rows, so we have to put nails in, regular finishing nails by hand with a hammer. And since this is a hard wood, this is hickory, so oak and hickory, we'll have to drill little holes on the outside, you know, about one every foot or so. I think it's depends on the width of the board what they recommend. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, so we got to do that up against. Got to leave a gap. Just the wood moves just like in furniture, so we have to leave a gap around the edge, and they recommend 3/4 of an inch. In this case, it'll fit underneath the drywall, so I've got a 1/2 inch there, and then we've got of course, the trim will have to go back on, and the shoe molding, that gives us, that's an inch. So we've got some room to move here, to play with. So, but I'm going to start with a 1/2 inch gap from the wall, plus the 1/2 inch of the drywall. So I'll have an inch gap technically on this starting row, but so we'll do some rows there on the edge, or nails on the edge, and then I'll pre-drill just like a nail gun would at an angle, so that both sides of the wood are down. And we picked out the straight boards for this first row. That's the most important, is getting this first row straight. So we're going to be checking with our chalk line and making sure that each one of them is straight. And then it's just a matter, once that first row is done, of going down the line. So there we are. All right, here we are. We got a few rows done. Only the first 2 rows had to do by hand, and then we were able to use the nail guns. We got the next row of paper down. You see that red line? That's tape that goes with the paper. It's the same vapor barrier, goes the same manufacturer as the paper. So we just got to continue on. But you do have to mix up the sizes of the boards. So you've got a short one there, but there's a lot of short ones in these boxes, so we have to kind of mix it up. So you don't want any of the seams in the board to line up with adjacent rows. You want them all staggered, so that's not quite as easy as it sounds. But a lot of the boards are the same size, so you just kind of have to open the box, and like here we got them laid out so we can kind of see the sizes of the boards and mix and match. So we just have to keep nailing away. We got the threshold for the bathroom one in, so we'll just be able to just roll right on. Well, here we are finishing up a little bit, and my assistant decided to join us, and she's helping. She's making sure that we got it all in the right spot, right, Molly girl? Yeah, there we go. Oh yes, we got this one in the right spot, right there. Yep, that's her approval. So we're getting toward the end. Floor's all installed. You see, we got it all the way around. We've got the trim is back in, and the shoe molding. It's just, let's see, we get down here in that corner, we can see it. This is called a shoe. This shoe molding. Some people call it a quarter round, but it's not actually a quarter round. It's actually flat right here at the base, and then comes up and curves. So that covers any mismatch between the trim and the floor. And see, we got it all taped up so we can paint. We got some patching on the wall to do. But the floor is all in. It's just a matter of getting the paint done. And we did some caulking at the top of the trim, and this is a clear caulk so that we don't have to paint the wall except the places that have been patched. And but it takes a week to dry before you can paint it, so it's going to be this way for a week, and then we'll paint it and put the furniture back.